the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special, taking a look at smart buildings, and with me to talk about it are smart people. First and foremost, Hannah Walker. Hannah is the COO of Sinclair Digital. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is Carol Everett Oliver. She is the CEO of CEO Communications as well as president of BICSI. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And last but not least, Glenn Collinge. Glenn is from FSR. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So a couple of things, guys. Smart buildings has been around for a minute, both from the construction standpoint, but also from the AV standpoint. And it is a very generic, sometimes can be a generic term, but let's get some definitions here. And Carol, we're going to start with you. When we say smart buildings, what are we talking about?
Okay, let's lead up to that because smart buildings is also synonymous with an intelligent building. So when you think of a building, you don't think of a building being smart. You think of the buildings with a lot of different building systems in them, right? So traditional buildings were running on proprietary software. They had different operating systems and a lot of different cabling types. In an intelligent building, and we're getting to the smartness, we are seeing more and more of these applications being integrated onto a common network through IP address and through structured cabling. So these integrated systems reduce human interaction because they can now operate on them, through their own integration, therefore making the building smart. So, like I say, intelligent buildings and smart buildings, they're often synonymous with each other. Anyway, the result is that by implementing integrated systems through a common network cabling, building owners are saving costs, both for the capital expense and the operating expense. For one thing, they're reducing the types of cabling and pulling just one IP copper or fiber cable to the applications for both data and power. And being able to monitor these systems to make them smart and without human intervention after they become smart, this can create a big savings on utilities. For example, using sensors to turn off lights or HVAC in unused spaces, that saves a lot of money. So this just makes financial sense. And this is why you're seeing a lot of people go towards designing and integrating and implementing smart buildings. In addition, by using network cabling and new technologies such as power over Ethernet and digital electricity, this results in even more savings of line power and energy usage, which also reduces the carbon footprint. So you can see why a lot of people are going towards intelligent smart buildings. I know that Hannah has some great examples that she'll give us on these new technologies and how they're being integrated. In fact, even recently, the implementation of a net zero facility. So by having all of these systems integrated, dashboards can be created to better monitor and control these systems. So this is why you see smart buildings are becoming smarter, because they can do this in the background without anybody sitting there, like the man behind the curtain.
That's right. Carol, really quickly, could you define for us what a net zero building is?
Oh, well, I know that Hannah's going to talk about what basically a net zero means that they're generating more power than they're using. So, for example, if Hannah wants to jump in and talk about that, but there's a facility that Sinclair Digital Group installed and designed the entire cabling system so that it was using solar. So solar panels on parking structures and on the top of the building, so they're actually using their own power. So let's say that city, they have a power outage, but this facility won't have a power outage because they've been generating their own and saving their own electricity. So basically net zero means they don't use any electricity, they generate their own. Is that right, Hannah?
Yeah, so the reason that it's called net zero and not, zero energy or something like that is because the way that the system works is that their renewable source is solar. So if you think about a building, half the day there's not going to be any solar energy stored, right? So that doesn't mean the building doesn't work at night. What that means is that they produce energy during the day, they push that back into the grid, they store some, they push the rest back into the grid. And then they end up producing enough to where even though they're pulling energy for the utility at nighttime, they produce so much during the day that it actually makes a net, zero production. So that's what the term net zero comes from. And how you get there is by, one, creating a very insulated and sustainable building core so that you're not losing energy out of your windows or walls. The second thing that you do is you reduce your load inside the building. So everything in the hotel is electric, first of all. Cooking equipment, they've got a full commercial kitchen, no gas at all on property. So first you go all electric to actually, because if you just move a bunch of stuff over to gas, that's kind of an interesting way to do net zero. But they go all electric. Then they try to reduce their building loads as much as possible. And some of the ways they do that is with low voltage. We can talk about those systems in a little bit. And then they add the renewable source to offset that. So those are the three things that you have to do to become net zero. And we just completed a design in New Haven, Connecticut. It's actually open now. It's called the Hotel Marcel, where it's the first net zero hotel property that's out there.
Hannah, really quickly, can you? I understand some of the cost savings here, right? And certainly the carbon footprint savings as well. But overarching, when you look at why a customer would kind of choose to go this route, what is the underlying driving force, or is it just it depends on what the end customer is looking to achieve?
So it does depend on what the goal of the end customer is. I would say it really breaks down into three main categories. The first is if the customer has high level sustainability goals. So if the customer has desire to do a net zero property, for example, and their main concern is how do I get my load as low as humanly possible, they're going to be looking at some of the solutions that we provide, which is using low voltage DC directly to end devices to reduce that AC to DC energy loss conversion. And if they are going to be doing solar and they want to look at batteries, and if they're wanting to, get rid of diesel in the building, get rid of gas, look for electrical systems that can replace those types of solutions, like using a battery instead of diesel. Those sustainability goals would drive the use of low voltage DC technology in a building. Another goal that we have is for hospitality specifically, and maybe some commercial office, I would say, is that they're looking to enhance the user experience. So for a guest, how can I capture the fact that all of these endpoints are now on one network and I can communicate with them across different systems. They're all on IP based. How can I use that data to give my guest the most amazing customer experience ever by, creating custom settings, letting them control everything with their mobile application. All of those things that are possible using low voltage technology. So that is a secondary infrastructure we see, or conduit as far as why people want to use this type of technology. The third is now, I would say, emerging now, which is just meeting the current codes and standards that are coming out by legislation. For example, New York just passed a bill which makes every building in the city, it has to reduce its electrical load by 30%. And if they do not, they will be heavily fined. And that's by 2030, I believe. It's Title 29. So other states are getting rid of gas in properties. You cannot put natural gas in your property. There are certain states that will fine you for testing your diesel generator, which is required in every high-rise building, and you have to test it once a month or else it doesn't work. But now you're going to be fined to do that. So other people are using these types of solutions to just not be fined by the city and the state because their energy goals are getting more rigorous as they pass new legislation. And people are really figuring out how do we do practical things to meet these goals and still be cost effective in our construction, and how do we look forward to the next 10 years or 15 years with what I'm building today. So that's kind of the third avenue that we're starting to see pick up more, just purely based on energy efficiency and how do I meet the current legislation that's coming out and meet all the requirements that they're asking for.
Glenn, let's bring the AV part of this. And how does this move to intelligent and smart buildings impact integrators?
Thanks, Tim. There's a lot of things here that apply. For example, I know many national AV companies that have either partnered with or have purchased a structured cabling company.
Okay.
This gives them not only the ability to be in the building months, sometimes even a lot longer than that, ahead of where the AV is being considered, but it also gives them a comfort factor with, okay, I'm already doing the structured cabling. How about if I go ahead and I do your AV as well? Or you just pass along the line that that's something that you also do, and that business is also picked up. Almost all of the cabling today, though, at least 80% is category cable of some kind, whether it's 6, 6A, and we're going to be seeing more of category 8 here in the future as well. As these cables are being run by AV installation teams, the rules and regulations for how they do these things are the same for the telecommunications. They're the same for the access control. They're the same for the security. So these are other things that are being run into the same ladders or the same J-hooks or whatever services they've got to actually run that cabling. The same codes and best practices apply also for these same things. So there's no reason why they can't do these things. Also, as Hannah touched on, there's a company called Volt Server. I'll give them a plug here. That is a company that has come up with digital electricity. And this is something, Tim, if you haven't read up on it, you definitely need to. It'll change the way you look at a lot of things. And what they're doing is they are taking the AC power and converting it to DC and then running that over longer distances through some proprietary servers that they have, which allow you to be able to do a lot of things that Hannah was talking about that she and Sinclair Digital are doing today. It's absolutely fascinating. I was able to stay at one of the hotels, the Sinclair Hotel in Fort Worth, and it's amazing what you can do. You can, while you're showering, you can be listening to country music or your local news. It's all built into the actual mirror. You can control the temperature in the shower. All this is low voltage. There's no reason why AV technicians can't be trained on how to do all this. It's not super high tech, and it's also something that some of the industry leaders are saying today is going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry in about 10 years between the low voltage controls, whether it's window shades, window shears, of course the control, that type of thing. And if it gets to be that point where all these things, as well as the low voltage lighting, which is primarily PoE lighting, when those things start catching on, there's no reason why these low voltage integrators that are doing primarily AV can't change. And actually, this may be something that BICSI needs to take a look at, is to look more into broadening their spectrum.
Glenn, really quickly, and Carol, you or Hannah, either one may have an insight on this. If this is really moving to a $10 billion industry in the next 5 to 10 years, and you are a low voltage contractor, you're an AV contractor, you're an electrical contractor, what would you do today to kind of position yourself to get into and kind of, position your company as an expert in this field? If this is going to grow to $10 billion, then, not one company is going to do this. So there will be several folks that will be needed. How would you position your company to kind of, get into this?
So one thing that I would say is to start looking for companies that design these types of systems, because right now, as a designer of these types of systems, the most difficult part that we have is the installation, because we're doing projects around the states. Not a lot of contractors are familiar with these types of systems. So there's a big need in the industry, and any new technology faces this problem where the installation can make or break an entire industry. Having bad installation jobs out there can really, we saw the same thing happen with VRF air conditioning It took much longer to get started in the United States than it has around the world because installers were unfamiliar and there was a lot of bad install jobs out there. So it really made the entire industry slow to pick up. So that's not something we want to see with low voltage happen. So I'm always looking for companies that are interested in this type of solution to start to learn about how these solutions go together. So, there's a lot of people out there right now, ourselves and other companies as well, that want to help installers be familiar with these systems to install them correctly. You can find, a lot of us at BICSI. You can find people, putting jobs together, bids, other designers, electrical engineers, other low voltage designers that are doing this. So that would be my first recommendation, is to reach out to a designer or a manufacturer even that makes PoE products and ask them, how can we get certified in your system and how can we be involved in projects? Because I guarantee you that around the United States, there's a huge need right now for installers that know what they're doing. And if I can see that installer is eager to learn and is willing to bid on jobs for us and be part of, an open bid, then, I'm more than happy to recommend them to any of my clients.
Yeah, I agree with, what Hannah's saying. And so, you kind of put together a group of partners of people that you want to, I don't want to use the term, but I am going to use it, cross-pollinate. So you've got people who are educated in, in AV, and then you've got people who are educated in structured cabling, and they need to come together. So now you're seeing a lot of people working together because, you've got certain education in, whether it's an installer of just data and voice cabling or an AV integrator or even a security guy. I remember doing presentations, when IP cameras first came out and almost having tomatoes thrown at me because they thought that low voltage was going to take over and there wasn't going to be any more use for security integrators. And I'm like, no. Well, we know how to install cable. We don't know how to set the camera up right. So there is a lot of partnerships going on, and I think that's how people need to get involved. And then also, learn about the cabling industry. We're finding, BICSI has education, training, certification, and they produce standards. And people find out about BICSI and they start taking these classes and they get trained. So, like Hannah says, there's a lot of bad installers out there. They haven't been trained properly.
And Tim, if I can add to that, I've I've seen a lot of bad installations too over the years. I think almost all of us have, one way or the other. Whether we, hopefully, it wasn't anything that any of our team necessarily did, but it definitely applies to it. I'm also have seen. I had lunch with a guy Tuesday, who is primarily an AV engineer, and he is now working for a very large company that is more IT focused, but to help them get into the AV world on it to help with their designs, especially in the low voltage areas. And there's no reason why some of the AV integrators can't look into getting a BICSI certified, like an RCDD, which is a Registered Communications Distribution Designer. RCDD is a big thing, and that's a big certification to get. If some of these AV companies could get some of these RCDDs on staff, they could also assist in getting that broad category of learning how to do these things and make it a much smaller picture for them. Something that FSR is also doing right now, we are offering a lot in our continuing education page on our website, which is fsrinc.com. And we're expanding that next year. We've got, 7 or 8 classes on there now. That's going to be considerably larger in the next few months, where we're going to be expanding that. And that's for AIA training for a lot of these things. So we're helping the architects also learn some of what Hannah specifically is saying that we're trying to get across to these people. I see people look at me when I talk about PoE lighting and some of the architect classes I give, and they look at me, it's like, so that's really going to be a big thing. And it's like, are you not listening about the power savings and the control and everything else? So we're doing the architectural training classes. We're doing the AV training classes for the CTS renewal points. We also have a BICSI certified class, and we're going to work on getting some more of those on as well. So we can also help train the AV people and let them know a lot of similarities of what they're doing now for, HD-based T, AV over IP, whatever that information is that they're using now in the AV systems, and apply that also to some of these other areas for more in the low voltage world.
Yeah, and I think another place to learn about this and how to somebody get involved in this industry. Definitely go to the conferences like BICSI has Infocom. BICSI has 2 major conferences a year, and there are people now that are, that AV people are now exhibiting at the BICSI conference, and there are people like structured cabling manufacturers that are at the Infocom. So there's a lot of that, again, using that word, cross pollination going on. Even I've seen it at the NICA conference, which is electrical contractors. They had presentations there on low voltage cabling and power over Ethernet, and giving some education to electrical contractors, because again, the same things happening that happened when I talked about security cameras going onto a low voltage cabling system. We're seeing that electrical contractors going, wait a second, you're taking away our business because you can't put lighting in. That's our business. Well, not if you're running PoE over it and you're using the IP cable. So there is a lot of I would say there's got to be a lot of collaboration between trades.
Yeah, I like, Carol, I like your use of cross pollination, because I'm a big fan of it. Glenn, really quickly, you've mentioned this a little bit, but what is the future of the intelligent building, of the smart building, and the AV portion when it comes to these new projects?
Well, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of changes, and some of this is going to be directly about the AC and how much AC power that is actually going to be needed in these facilities. I think we're going to be seeing in the future a lot more products that are available to be powered by DC directly, whether it's with a RJ45 jack. I mean, you can already do that now with a lot of displays with the power connection and the HDMI. That was a standard 1.3, I think. For that ability, and I think that applies up to a lot of the 60-inch displays today. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. And as a matter of fact, I was at a Walmart the other day, and I saw a monitor and the security camera, and they were both being powered by low voltage. There was no power there at all. So this is one big change. And why do you want that have to add that conversion into it also? It's not just the cost. It's the heat. It's the other processes that actually also break that down to make it that much harder to get the system out there. Where again, just something simple like DC will allow you to do it. And PoE, by the way, is also is a world standard. So that's something that is everywhere. And so if you start making products for that with the PoE power connection, you're good. And there's also changes in the future, I'm sure, going to be coming to PoE that are going to be allowing higher current needs to be taken care of for those same things.
The thing with PoE, and what you just mentioned there, is reminiscent of somebody who's been in radio and broadcasting for years. 30 years ago, we had to worry about NCSC and CCAM and PAL, whereas today you don't necessarily have to concern yourself with that. So that is an interesting correlation. Carol, you mentioned the fact that BICSI has education. And we talked a little bit about that. But walk somebody through, if they're an AV integrator and they're listening to this and they're like, this sounds interesting, how do I get started with BICSI? Where do I go? What's kind of the first steps?
I would certainly have them go on the website and take a look at the classes they offer, and also the certification. Again, going to their conference, the big one's coming up in early February. Looking at that, the thing about the BICSI standards that makes it different than the other standards that are out there, because someone goes, oh, I can have to go to IEEE to look at what are the definition of the electrical properties and what are the different levels of power over Ethernet, how much power does this generate, and that can be really, really confusing. And then TIA, they actually define the category twisted pair and fiber cabling, like which cable is best for which application. But in this situation, there's no one size fits all, right? Because cable selection is based on bandwidth and distance and application requirements. topology, and of course cost. So BICSI, being the ICT, it stands for Information Communications Technology Association, pretty much combines all of these other standards and puts it into documents that are focused on the design and the installation. So they also have manuals in the classes. So if anyone wants to know about, gee, maybe I should become an RCDD. By the way, I think, Hannah, she got involved in this industry and boom, I think within a year she had her RCDD because she became ingrained in this industry, and that's the way to do it. There is a standard called the 007 from BICSI, and it's really specific to the intelligent building design and installation. So, I would certainly start with that if they're going to get involved. And the 007 has chapters on the different applications like access control and Wi-Fi and security cameras, and how do they integrate with each other. So that's a really good place to start. How do I design my layout? And how do I design my telecommunications room? Because now all of these things are going to be in one telecommunication room or maybe two. So it really gives layout. So I would certainly go there and look at that. In AVIXA, they have certifications. They have their CTS and CTSI, but they are working with BICSI to make sure that the installation is going to work, because you can't just pull any cable or any category 5E or 6 or 6A cable. You need to make sure that it's going to be working with that end device. And as Glenn said, and I really like that, Glenn, that you put a plug in there. So Glenn and at FSR, they're doing a lot of educational courses. So look at the manufacturers. They have a lot of these courses as well. FSR is one of them. The cable and connectivity manufacturers have these courses. So there is a plethora of information and education if you just, take a peek under that rug or wherever you want to find it. But, just go on. And in fact, BICSI has a listing of the courses that by the manufacturers that will give continuing education credits. And, you can go in there and just pull up an hour course and at least get some taste of what this is all about.
And Tim, if I can throw in one more quick thing there, there's also a lot of free webinars out there that you can watch. I was looking at some today from NECA that were specifically about low voltage and some of the new standards, especially with the new Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot of incentives out there for new buildings and also for new installation people. They're actually requiring apprentices in some of these applications to be brought on to have new hirees involved with this. So there's a lot of free information out there in the internet by reputable sources. It's not like YouTube where you watch it. I've never done this before, but here's how I do it, which makes almost all of us kind of get really kind of nervous. But there are good applications for training out there that are at no charge, like our webinars. We don't charge for those live webinars that we do.
That's a good point that you brought up. There are so many free courses out there that so it's not like, how much is this going to cost me? That's a good point, Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Hannah Walker. Hannah is from Sinclair Digital. How do people connect with you or Sinclair Digital?
So you can go to our website, sinclair-digital.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. We're also on there. Or feel free to email me just at hannah@sinclair-digital.com.
Carol Everett Oliver, CEO from CEO Communications, but also with BICSI. Carol, you promote either one or both. How do people connect with you in general?
Okay, so BICSI is an association, so I'm the president of the board of directors, so I'm the chair of the board of directors. So that's how it works. When you're on a board of directors, you don't get paid for it, but it's a great volunteer, and I just kind of worked my way up the ranks. I do have a BICSI email address, so it's coliver@bixivolunteer.net. My company, so I am an ICT consultant, and so my company's name is CEO Communications. That stands for Carol Everett Oliver. But I'm the CEO of my own CEO. But my address is CEO@ceocom, that's with 2 M's.com.
Glenn, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. How do people connect with you or FSR?
I'm at G2 at FSRinc.com. And of course, you can also reach me through looking through information on the FSR website, www.fsrinc.com.
All right, very good. Thank you all so much. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. And find more specials just like this all over the website. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.